I am a Jew opposed to your foreign policy in Gaza. Are you going to label me as anti-Semitic and try to deport me too?
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
She is a proud former Navy nurse and was court-martialed during the Vietnam War for her anti-war protests. Please give a very warm welcome to the incredible Susan Schnall.
You try to label the protesters of genocide on college campuses as threats to American foreign policy. Well, Mr. President, I disagree with your foreign policy in Gaza. Let me go further. I am a Jew opposed to your foreign policy in Gaza. Are you going to label me as anti-Semitic and try to deport me too? Like Mohammed Khalil, who was kidnapped from Columbia University housing, arrested, and is held in a Louisiana detention facility because his presence in the United States is adversarial to this country's foreign policy and national security interests. Let me be clear. Genocide, the supplying of armaments to a country that is committing genocide, is against the interests of this country. You are adversarial to the American people. You and the arms makers are adversarial to national security interests of this country. You are committing war crimes.
War crimes. War crimes.
You support Israel as it unleashes hell and destruction on the people in Gaza with total impunity. Israel has carried out acts prohibited under the Genocide Convention with a specific intent to destroy Palestinians. These include killings, causing serious bodily harm or mental harm, and deliberately inflicting on Palestinians in Gaza conditions of life calculated to bring about their destruction. Month after month, Israel has treated Palestinians and Gaza as a subhuman group, unworthy of human rights and dignity. Last year, in February of 2024, Veterans for Peace wrote to Secretary of State Anthony Blinken about the violations of the Geneva Genocide Convention and national law, drawing the connection between shipments of weapons to Israel and the committing of genocide against the people in Gaza. And 1 year ago, on February 25th, Aaron Bushnell, an active duty airman, spoke, quote, "I am an active duty member of the United States Air Force, and I will no longer be complicit in genocide." I am about to engage in an extreme act of protest, but compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it's not extreme at all. This is what our ruling class has decided will be normal. Free Palestine.
Free Palestine!
And
Free Palestine!
And at that moment, he doused his body in gasoline and set himself on fire. Too many of us in Veterans of Peace have seen the suffering war creates, and it never leaves our memories.
No, it doesn't.
All of us agonize over our government's aiding and abetting the slaughtering of innocents. These policymakers, swaddled in privilege, take their orders from those who profit from death and suffering. We know who they are. The people who run Boeing, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and their fellow merchants of death, and the people who finance what the merchants do. They operate on a grand scale internationally, but also on a singular small scale. They as much as lit the match for Aaron Bushnell. The fire that killed Alan Bushnell was simply the collateral damage, as it's so callously called, of the ongoing conflagration in Palestine. Hey, America, listen to us. We were the soldiers you sent to Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Iraq, Afghanistan, Okinawa, Japan, Korea, Niger, Syria. Through television and social media, we are witness to the antipathy and ignorance of the American public as wars rage at home toward those in poor communities and people of color. We are incited by news organizations that constantly blast accounts of the war on Gaza and in Ukraine and the Middle East as though we're watching a football game, leading the cheering section of revelers. Let me tell you, as a veteran who cared for soldiers during the American war in Southeast Asia, war injures all who participate. It kills the body and soul. It damages communities and families. It impacts generations. And who profits? The war industry, the merchants of death that produce and distribute armaments. It drains our social resources that are life-sustaining, our education, healthcare, social services, housing, and uses those resources for death and destruction. We export our military violence to the highest bidder, and today, that is Israel. America, we supply the arms used to the Palestinian children in Gaza. We starve the children in Gaza as we starve children in other parts of the world. We look for wars as outlets for our munitions industry. We perpetuate violence in the Middle East. We starve, imprison, attack civilians in Gaza. Let me be clear. Veterans for Peace opposes all targeting of civilians. We denounce the Hamas attacks on civilians and children as we denounce the Israeli attacks on Gaza. Our government uses our tax dollars to inflame the struggle and fighting in the Middle East and in Ukraine. Without the continuation and the start of a ceasefire in Ukraine, this war, like all wars, will continue to escalate. We must break the pattern of escalating violence that feeds hatred, escalates violence, creates orphans, and self-replicates indefinitely. It is our tax dollars that have made America the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. I think of those lives changed forever by war and conflict. And along with millions of others, rededicate myself to healing the wounds of war, to working for peace and social justice, to bringing an end to armed conflict, to move us from a war economy to a peace economy, to care for those harmed, and to stop this insanity called war wherever it is. To end corporate power and destruction, to be life-giving instead of death-giving. For if we, and I know there's a lot of veterans here, if we who have known war don't dedicate ourselves to ending it, who will? Thank you.
Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. Sometimes you got to defend democracy more than once. You know, I put 8 years in, active duty, disabled veteran, but sometimes your country needs help. And right now we need help. We're alienating our allies, long-standing allies. The whole world is looking at us like we aren't the people who we were. But we are. These people here, we're still the same people.
Right.
There's some people in that building behind me that forgot. They forgot this. They forgot that they swore an oath, and they're letting the president get away with breaking it. And therefore, they're breaking their oath.
Absolutely.
And I'm not okay with that. You have a right to vote for however you want. That's this country. That's part of what's great about it. But if you made a mistake, which is what happened here, we got to fix it. And if I'm not willing to come up here and stand up and say what I think is wrong going on here, how can I expect anybody else to?
Right.
No?
You know, Trump and Republicans always claim that they were for the military, you know, party of the veterans, and, you know, their supporters. But by cutting services for veterans and doing everything that they're doing, are they revealing that they never really cared about veterans and it was all a scam and a con? And
so, this right here. What did he call us?
Have called him Santa, have called him
Suckers and losers. But you know what? Even while he was in his first term in office, what did he do to his buddy, Putin, when the FBI learned, and I believe it was the FBI, learned that Putin had put bounties on American service members fighting overseas?
what did he do?
Trump didn't do anything. Why?
We are the soldiers who served in Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq that lost over 65,000 lives, who returned home with illnesses and disabilities related to war, to Agent Orange, to burn pits, to post-traumatic stress that affected not only our lives, but those of our families, our children, and our community. We are not your crony oligarchs who got out of service because they had bone spurs or some other made-up condition, and wealthy parents that got them out of the service. We will not be erased. We served this country. Veterans make up 1/3 of the employees in the United States Department of Veteran Affairs and is facing a cut of 17% of its workforce. It is deplorable. This is creating chaos with a delay in benefits, straining claims and processing, delaying school assistance for student veterans. Delay in benefits under the congressional recently passed PACT Act that is finally recognizing the victims of burn pits in Afghanistan. It was a promise to address the Comprehensive Toxins Act, and we are now experiencing a delay. The United States Department of Veteran Affairs is the second largest agency after the Defense Department. And I would say that any time a country decides to send its people to war, it has the obligation to prepare for those who return from war.